Alright, and welcome to another episode of CJ Discusses. Today we're discussing The Challenge, Season 40, Episode 8, which aired yesterday on MTV.com. And honestly, it's looking like it's just the death of Era 1 this week. We're down to Rachel and Derek's got a pretty significant leg injury, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to hold up. We'll see what these two do. It's really sad to see Era 1 go out the way they have. I mean, these are my people. This is my era. Just dating myself, but it really does seem like, the old home bus just rolled up to the house in Vietnam and dropped them off. And they just can't seem to get anything going at this point, with zero momentum going into this week's challenge. In addition, it looks like the Vacation Alliance is starting to have some cracks, which really isn't that surprising, seeing who's in that. And a lot of them are just gamers, and they have their own agendas. So we'll see how that pans out as the episode goes on. The episode begins with a flashback scene to season 20, which was Cutthroat, where it was a 3-on-1 situation. You had three guys going against Derek in a King of the Ring type event where, they had their shields and they were basically trying to push each other off this island into a mud moat. And Derek just, did what he did and just stomped these guys. So a little bit of foreshadowing on probably what's going to happen in this episode. Additionally, you see both Casey, who, finally found a voice and is able to speak this week, and Michelle both talking to Jenny and trying to talk to her about creating some friends basically in the house so that she doesn't feel so alone. But, I mean, that only goes so far. Jenny really doesn't have any friends in the house. She's only done 2 episodes. She hasn't really been on since Total Madness, which was a while ago. And I think the only player really that's left from that is Johnny Bananas, who she had any significant time or has a relationship with. So it's really hard for her to go ahead and move forward in this house without having any of those pre-established relationships and really being away from the game for so long. So I really just see her, unfortunately being that sacrificial goat for Era 4 until she either wins the final, which has a very good chance of doing, or, she runs up against the A wall in an elimination challenge, which is also probably bound to happen at some point. We also see a little bit of Ryan this week. He got called out by Johnny last week for really not doing much of anything. Johnny just sees him kind of as a goat in this game and is just going to ride coattails. Ryan decides that he's not staying in the room anymore. Now that there's some room, he's going to go find a sleeping place someplace else. So he goes ahead and moves out, and then he's trying to get away from Johnny essentially because Johnny just likes to talk about himself, as well as Laurel, who's also a very annoying presence in the house. And they both tease him that they're going to follow him to wherever he goes, but that doesn't actually happen. But we also see a little bit of what happened between Ryan and Laurel, who were really tight on All Stars 4. But there was obviously something that happened between then and now, and it seems that the Laurel's breakup with Nicole has something to do with it. After they broke up, Nicole just started spamming Ryan's phone with text messages, and he was not very happy with that. I mean, just block her, man. Just block Nicole. She seems like a crazy girl. I would just block her and move on with my life. Next, we see Rachel and Derek, who know that they're essentially dead people walking, scrambling, trying to, figure out how they can potentially get any further in this game at this point. And they strike up a deal with Era 4, specifically Theo, who is the other target on Era 4 this week, that if Era 4 should win and Era 1 doesn't lose this challenge, that Theo wouldn't throw them in this week. They would get basically the week off. And Theo, speaking for Era 4, takes him up on that deal. So that gives Derek and Rachel a little bit of life left in this game. All right, so we get to this week's daily challenge, and we find out that, yes, it is a callback to Cutthroat, as well as a shameless plug for Gladiator 2, which is coming out next month, which TJ says is his favorite movie of all time. So, of course, we have to get the gratuitous clip of Gladiator 2 coming out, which, I don't mind seeing Pedro Pascal. And even Denzel's looking pretty good in this movie, but I got my own Gladiator upstairs, so I'll stick with him. With that, we go ahead and TJ explains what In Battle for Honor is going to be. And basically, it's, like I said, it's another King in the Hill where all of the teams are going to battle each other, and we're going to see which era ends up either having the most people at the end or see if they can get everybody out. Obviously, it's going to be men versus women, and obviously, Era 1 is at a disadvantage since they only have one person to compete. So Era 4 takes them in and kind of, tries to shield them as much as possible. We see Derek and Corey kind of getting into it. I think Derek, basically calls Corey weak because he can't even get essentially a hurt person. I think he called him a three-legged dog out of the ring, which, Derek finally does get thrown into the mud, but it takes two or three guys to go ahead and get him out. So that sparks a little bit of a confrontation that we see later on in the show, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. Next, we have the women that come in, and right away you can see that the tone's going to be a little bit different. We see the guys over on the sideline, and I think every single one of them has a bandage on his face. And these girls don't really want any of that, except for Rachel, who looks like she's just ready to go steamroll some chicks, and Casey, who is also saying she wants to go steamroll some chicks, but does absolutely nothing. She is all talk and no action. We get going, and Rachel basically, while she does get involved in some of the melee, she does kind of stand off to the side because she's just trying to protect herself. Michelle sees that Eras 2 and 3 are working actively against Era 4, though, and they are teaming up, which she's a little bit upset about because the Vacation Alliance is really Eras 3 and 4, and she thought that, they were going to protect each other, but we see that is not going to happen, so that alliance is starting to fracture at this point. We go ahead, we get to the end, and TJ announces that Era 1 are the losers this week because they had the least amount of people. Well, no kidding. They had the least amount of people going into it. So why did we go ahead and sit here and do all of this knowing that these guys were going to be the losers this week? At least try to make it somewhat fair. If we're not going to do a format change and shake up the teams, because ultimately it's not a team competition this season. Only one person is going to win. So why are we perpetuating this with Era 1? They make it percentages based, so at least they have a chance to at least win or not come in last. I mean, they got 50%. Rachel stayed up the whole time. But, instead we went through this whole farce just to have Rachel and Derek, of course, come in last, and now they are automatically going into the elimination this week. We then see, a little bit of a continuation on what happened in the ring with Corey and Derek arguing. On the podcast, Derek says that there was a little bit more leading up to this before he starts throwing his life jacket at Corey. Apparently, Corey was, talking some trash to Derek, and Derek basically called him weak because, again, he couldn't get him out. He's got a bad leg, and you can't get a guy out with a bad leg. So, things got a little bit heated at that point, and that's obviously going to carry over into the nominations because Corey is also another target this week. The good news for Rachel and Derek is that Era 4 wins. So Theo and Jenny, who are the Era 4 targets, at least, are looking out to protect them. They're going to try to do what they can and give them a favorable matchup as we go into the elimination. During the challenge, Devin did try to get Corey to strike up a deal with Theo where that they would protect him if Era 3 had won, but that didn't happen, and now, basically Corey's this dude out on an island at this point. So we go into deliberations, and of course, things start to get a little bit heated. Avery's scrambling, trying to do what she can to protect herself. She thinks that Derek Chavez from Era 2 should just go ahead and jump on the grenade and take one for the team since she did that earlier in the season, and she and Tony ended up going in to protect Derek. But Derek's not having it. Derek Chavez does not want to go in, and there's no way that I think he could even convince Cara to go in there. I just think that she's crazy thinking that that's going to happen. Of course, Derek Kaczynski, Derek K, and Rachel, have gotten into it with Corey during the day, and basically Derek Kaczynski says he wants Corey. And Theo and Jen, you're like, that's easy, that keeps my hands clean. You said that's who you want, they're available. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to try to keep my hands clean and kind of explain this to my team. We're going to do a team vote. I may omit some of the facts and get the outcome that I want, and then we'll go ahead and we'll move on from here, which in fact does happen. Corey is livid at this point. He thought that he was going to have more support from his friends, and I'll say friends in quotation, in Era 4, but Casey and Josh are doing what they do. They come from the world of Big Brother, and they're just going to play their game, essentially, and just go with the votes. And they knew that the votes were going for Corey and Avery, so they just went ahead and went that way. Just further fracturing the alliance because Devin and Tori are not happy that Era 3 is going in. From there, we go to the arena and we see that it's going to be another physical event today, which is great. I'm glad that we're finally seeing some physical eliminations instead of all these carnival games that we've had. But this doesn't obviously play to Derek's strength. And we see that it's just a continuation of a gladiator theme. And, it's basically a boxing match in the ring. One player is going to be the striker, and the other person is going to be the evader. The evader is going to wear a padded suit that's got these balls of chalk on them that are going to explode when you hit them. They're also going to be wearing some bells, and they have rubber chicken tied to their feet so that the blindfolded striker can at least have a fighting chance of finding these guys in the ring. We've seen events like this with the stick strike that they had way back in the day, going back to the days of night. But this is actually a pretty good event if you're mobile, which Derek is not. Fortunately, though, the women go first, and Rachel is going to be the striker first, and Avery's going to be the evader. And Rachel just beats the living poop out of Avery. Avery does not do anything to go ahead and try to defend herself, doesn't put her arms up, nothing. She does try to move around, but Rachel tells us she's a black belt in karate. She does this for fun. This is something she used to do every weekend when she was a kid, is just go out and do these tournaments, and she just beats the crap out of Avery. And I am here to see it because I want to see some physical events. Avery looks a little shell-shocked when they go ahead and end it, and they have to swap it up. She does a decent job of getting at Rachel. She does finally start to figure it out. I think Rachel kind of, gets a little tired from running around the ring a little bit. And Avery is able to get some of the chalk on her. But it's pretty clear, unless, they're showing us something that we didn't see, that Rachel's going to win that round. We then go to the men's competition, and it's just a full-on brawl. Corey goes first, and obviously Derek can't move, so he's doing his best to try to defend himself, but Corey is just wailing on Derek, and he ends up getting all of the chalk bags. So we go ahead and swap it out, and surprisingly Derek is able to land a lot of hits on Corey, and he ends up getting all of his smoke bags, or chalk bags too. So it's going to come down to time. TJ goes and tells us that, yes, Rachel did win the women's round, so Rachel's going to continue on for Era 1, so Era 1 lives to fight another day. Obviously, she's going to be the target this week. But the men's heat came down to a tie because they both got all of the chalk bags, so now it just comes down to who did it the fastest. And TJ tells us that Corey gets the win. Corey is super excited, but dude, you just beat a guy that, according to what Derek told us on the podcast, has a torn ACL and torn meniscus. So, the fact that he was actually able to get out there and still compete tells us a lot about Derek's fortitude and competitiveness. So unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Derek, and I don't know how that's going to play out for Rachel. Obviously, she's going to be the female target for Era 1, and, who knows what's coming in next week's challenge and how she's going to be able to compete in the following weeks if she's able to make it, in some of these events that require more than one person. But she also doesn't have a male counterpart, so what happens when she gets tossed into the arena? Does she get to pick another target from another era to go in there with her? Who knows? I am interested to see it, but I do think it's long past time that we have a format change. The targets for next week are, we got Casey, Ryan, Laurel, Devin, Tori, and Kylan. And the interesting thing about this is that Casey volunteered, so I'm really curious to see how Era 4 does next week. Things are going to further start to decline for the Vacation Alliance as numbers are starting to dwindle. Now that, basically Era 1's no longer a factor, they're going to have to start turning on each other. And really it's going to come down to either you win, you lose, or you're going in. So, there's really, it's not going to become much of a vote as we continue to go on through the next weeks. So I hope to see you soon, and I'll keep an eye out for next week's episode.